morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 73 in the book of Genesis. We're in Genesis chapter 14. We read almost the whole thing yesterday. Let me remind you how we finished. We left with a cliffhanger of Abram doing something militarily, which we hadn't actually ever heard of before. I left you with a quote from Warren Wiersbe, which says, "Your faith," which is what Abraham is known for, "has not been tested until we have been asked to bear what seems to be unbearable and do what seems to be unreasonable and expect what seems to be impossible." So impossible, unreasonable, unbearable story of faith we're going to see in real life here with Abram. So let me just summarize the military part of the story, which starts in 2080 BC under a pretty incredible detail. Now, what happens is a group of kings near Israel from Sodom and Gomorrah and 3 other cities, they're vassals of the empire that's all the way over in Iran, these kingdoms. And apparently they pay the tribute and cooperate. And they do that for 12 years. In the 13th year, they rebel. And so this is a conspiracy, if you will. They get together. They decide to do that. It's premeditated. It's calculated. And they kind of turn themselves into some bad guys. And then the Syrians were from the what we call Iran today, 2,000 miles away. They finally get wind of it because the news travels slowly, and they decide what they're going to do, which is going to smite them and militarily become victorious over them. So you have these bad guys in the promised land rebelling against the bad guys from far away. They march in, and along the way they pick off like 6 more armies. And then you sort of have 10 or 11 armies against these 5 armies in the Israeli area. So finally, a battle comes. This Assyrian big army marches down the east side of the Jordan River, picking off these various kingdoms. It kind of loops around the Dead Sea, and then it meets up with the 5 armies from the Promised Land. And so they defeat that. Now, along the way, something happens. There's this other guy, this knuckle-headed guy, that's his name is Lot. He's been kind of edging towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and he kind of does a bad thing there and keeps associating with them, and he gets captured, and that's where the story starts here today. So this big army with Lot in it as a captive, with all the possessions from this huge area in a 2,000-mile march, are now heading back to Assyria. It's sort of you're on one end of the Fertile Crescent. It's actually on the farthest end of the Fertile Crescent. So Abraham is going to hear about that. Abram is going to hear about this. Now, here's the thing about being a Bible reader, is you can't read ahead. So avoid the temptation. You got to put yourself in Abram's position, where this massively successful, 100% successful army, maybe 16 armies strong now. You can't imagine a worse military situation, and I'm pretty sure that's the point here. It's on its ways back with the plunder, and then this happens. This is from chapter 14, verse 13. "Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Abner. They were allies of Abraham. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, and that's where we stopped yesterday. So you can't read ahead. This reminds me of the moment when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were just about ready to go into the fiery furnace. And they say, if Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us. And he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But if he does not, we want you to know we will not serve you. We're going to be faithful. Or your gods, or worship the image of gold that you have set up." So like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God is able to do the right thing here for Abram. But he doesn't know this yet, so he has to make this movement of faith. So here's what happens. Abram, he leads forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them. which is interesting because there's not been a word of Abram being a military person or anybody in his retinue being of military people. And he went and pursued as far as Dan. Dan is the northernmost city in Israel. And he divides his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobath, north of Damascus. That's the next country up in Syria. Then he brought back all the possessions and also brought back his kinsman, Lot, with his possessions and with the women and the people. So 318 trained what? There's never been a word spoken about these guys being warriors. He divides his inferior forces. He defeats them and then he pursues them, chases them down, and then brings back everything, all the possessions of the 16 armies, the weapons, the women, the provisions, the flocks, everything. And as the kinsman redeemer, he's the uncle of Lot. That's a one from among you who comes to save you. And here's this, it's a biblical theme. We're going to see it in the book of Ruth with Boaz. And this is all pointing towards Christ is going to kind of do the same thing. And the point is, even though we're knuckleheads and we don't deserve it, we get rescued. So what we see here today is Abram's unbearable, unreasonable, and impossible efforts of faith. And we have to put ourselves into the story and don't read ahead and say, poof, hey, this is going to turn out fine. Abraham is statistically and logistically and situationally going to be killed as he does this. He's 7 years old. He has this God who he's on speaking terms yet, but it's early in the relationship. He's got some promises. Most of them have not come true yet. So he doesn't know what's going to happen yet. Does he continue in faith? Yes, this is an incredible story of faith. This is faith with boots on and swords drawn. This is the nation that was promised, not getting snuffed out. So something happens here in 2080 BC that may call out to you. Trust God. Go with Him. Be faithful to the people around you, specifically if you've got a lot in your life, which is a knucklehead around you, the weaker brother. You know, in a bad situation, the worst military situation, God is able, but if not, we're resolved to serve Him. So when the day comes that the testing of your faith, you may find it unbearable, unreasonable, and impossible. That will set the tone, will set the scenario, will set the stage for your faith. Thanks for listening.